What's up, everyone? Welcome. We are on CannaBuzz right now. Thank you so much for watching. We have a great episode for you today. We have Aaron here. We're going to be talking all about growing. He's there in the canopy. He's checking in from New York, so we're going to be learning all about what's going down at Rooted NY in New York, what's going on in the New York scene, all that sort of stuff. It's going to be a great one today. But before we get too far into the episode, I need to give some folks some shout outs. First off, shout out to everyone in the CannaBuzz community. It's our monthly subscription that supports the show, helps JR go to shows, helps us get camera equipment. So when he goes to those shows or goes to a farm, we can capture some really great video, things like that. We also send out packs of seeds. JR was just teasing some packs of seeds that we can give away. And your subscriptions helps us send all that stuff out to people all over the world. So thank you so much for helping make all this stuff happen. You can be a part of that by joining the CannaBuzz community. Download CannaBuzz on the iOS App Store or go to cannabuzz.app and use the code BUZZ for your first month free. Also, shout out to lostcoastplanttherapy.com. If you're looking for an organic IPM spray for your grow, both inside and outdoor, check out lostcoastplanttherapy.com. It's a really effective product. We've done several videos with those guys. If you want to learn more about how to use Lost Coast Plant Therapy, check out our channel. But thank you so much to Lost Coast for their support, and thank you to Dirk. Also, shout out to sacred3mushrooms.com. If you want to grow your own fungi at home, check out sacred3mushrooms.com. Get yourself a grow kit. They're about $80 or so, and it comes with everything you need. And on their website, they also have links to spores and all that kind of stuff. So literally everything you need, plus the instructions, all on sacred3mushrooms.com, and use that code CannaBuzz for a discount. And then our last couple shout outs, I'm going to throw it over to JR.
Excellent, Q. Thanks. For our Tiki announcements, he's doing the Orange Zushi Redux as a giveaway for every pack that you order. TikiSeeds.com. But I also wanted to mention TikiCuts.com because now is the cut time of the year. And Tiki Cuts has a lot. He's expanded his menu quite a bit. So there's a lot of really, really fire stuff to choose from. So check out TikiCuts.com. And then for Raw Genetics, today is the last day. May 1st is the last day to get on their 420 sale. So if you want to hit that up, hit them up. Use CannaBuzz in your comments, and he'll throw in some extra promos guaranteed. And that's at rawgenetics.io. And also hit up secretselections.io. They have their menu up now as well. And the website there has been redone.
Awesome. Well, thanks to our genetics sponsors. People always need great genetics to grow some great weed. And we're going to be talking all about growing great weed today, especially about living soil, organic, all stuff that our listeners love to learn more about. So let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining us, Aaron from Rooted NY. You're here, like I said, to talk about living soil and growing in the state of New York. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. It's great to be here.
Thanks for coming on. One of the first things that we always ask our guests as they come on the show for the first time is how you fell in love with the plant and how the plants helped get you where you are today.
Yeah. Great question. That for me happened later in my life. I moved to Denver in 2009. And when I got out there, I wasn't even really like a big smoker. I'd smoked some weed in my life, but not till I got there and really got surrounded by the culture that was emerging in that time period did I really start to go like, this is cool. And I started out trying to grow pretty quickly and fell in love with it. I was a salesperson and was like sending some of the extra weed that I grew back to New York, where I'm from here. I was sending some of my weed back here and just making a nice little side hustle out of it. And I was like, damn, I could quit my sales job and do this full time. So that's what I did. I started out running some trap houses and doing some shit with people there, sending packs back to New York and stuff. And then we expanded until about a year or two later, I had my first offer from a legal dispensary, and they are called Ajoya. They're still operational today. They gave me my first grow job running a warehouse there, a couple hundred lights, and the rest is history.
So let's dive into kind of the backstory on the living soil grow. So can you tell us about, was that first grow that you were doing, was that living soil, or kind of tell us the backstory, I guess, doing living soil on that kind of scale?
Yeah, no, I did not start out that way. This was maybe my first commercial gigs were like 2011, 12 timeframe. And those grows were cocoa, drained to waste. And I was using various nutrient lines. I've tried just about all of them: Canna, House and Garden, you know, uh, all those basic salt lines. And it was actually at Ajoya, I had a trimmer working for me who would refuse to smoke my weed. And I was like, "What are you talking about, dude? This is fire." Like, I thought it was good and we knew what we were doing. But he's like, "No, that's the boo boo." And he wouldn't touch it. He had his own supplies of good living soil herb. And after about a month straight of just going on smoke break at lunch with this guy and hanging out, I was like, "Man, what the fuck?" Because this weed is just better than mine. And I had to admit it, like I couldn't let my ego override my commitment to being good at what I do. And I started asking him, like, "Why is this so much better, man?" And he's like, "It's grown with plain water. This is organic living soil grown with plain water." And I'm like, "What the hell?" And I was all about the yields those days because it was, a commercial job and I was trying to make money. And that's the mentality. I learned from hydro store guys and traditional, you're learning to grow. You just ask whoever. You're like, "Oh, the guy at the grocery store must be an expert because, they work here. They know about growing weeds." So they taught me to use salts and do the synthetic route. But I saw this weed that's way better than mine, and I was like, "I got to learn this." But having that commercial background made me, I wanted to learn it, but I wasn't willing to sacrifice productivity. Like, I still needed to perform, and I didn't want to learn to grow good weed just at home in a grow tent. I wanted to be able to do it on a commercial scale. So that was the beginning of my journey on figuring out, like, hey, how can I scale this up? And at the time, there wasn't a lot of resources or people to learn from. It's almost nobody. I was on the forums learning from people like Jeremy Silva at BuildASoil. He was starting his company and would spend time with me on the phone, educating me about what he knew. Same with Ian from Mountain Organics in California. He was a great resource and had like a website with blogs up. Plus, they were on the forums, Blue Jay and, Clackamas Coot. Those guys were telling you how to do the 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3 recipe of compost, peat moss, and aeration. So I started building my own living soils and implementing those methodologies into my home grows while I continued to run the commercial facilities on salts. So I dialed it in my trap houses, and then started to push out from there.
And so now I've noticed, I've been kind of watching your journey over Instagram, and I saw how you set up your beds, and you kind of one thing I noticed is that you have a drain kind of about, it looks like it's about 10 or 12 inches off, or probably maybe about 8 to 12 inches off the ground. Can you talk
Yeah,
about how you initially prepared your beds and how you set things up for scale?
sure. And so that drain that you see, there's one right in front of me. It's actually only about 3.5 or 4 inches off the ground. You see that pipe? Hopefully my camera's working. So this is a horizontal living soil. And I learned this technique from Leighton Morrison. So big props to him. He's a soil engineer, which is like a real job, engineering soil. And I met him out at early events that Joshua from Dutch Blooms was putting on, the regenerative science of regenerative cannabis cultivation events that were happening in Humboldt and stuff. And I started to learn from some of the things that he was talking about, how real sand, silt, and clay is the natural home to microbiology. Things like mycorrhizal fungi and just a large diversity of microorganisms. They didn't evolve to survive and live in peat moss, or cocoa coir. So that made a lot of sense to me. And I was like, well, if the goal here, I took Elaine Ingham's soil food web stuff. I learned microscopy from her and started to really just educate myself on nutrient cycling in soils. And I realized I needed the sand, silt, and clay layers to achieve the diversity of biology I was really looking for. So the way that his system works, that he's designed, is that you create an E horizon, which stands for alluvial. It's kind of like the rock and mineral layer you would find in the earth, where oftentimes groundwater is located. And plants are always looking for groundwater. They're digging their roots ever deeper into the soil to try and find that groundwater. And if you provide it for them, like I have in these beds, you get pretty phenomenal results. So what we have here, I'll go back to the other view, is a drain that, if you can see my hand, the alluvial layer, the sand and stone go to about here. But the bottom of the drain is right about here. So as soon as the water gets to that level, it can't fill any higher and it will spill out these tubes. On top of my E horizon is my sand, silt, clay layer. That's my A horizon, and it goes to about here. That is some clay that we dug up out of our property. We sourced the silt from a source that Leighton has in Connecticut. He said it was some of the best silt that he's found available in the country. And these excavators were in a real nice, rich silt pocket. So we ordered a bunch of material from them. And then we got the sand from one of our buddies right down the street, like 2 miles down the road. He's got a excavation company, and we mixed those three components together in a specific ratio, and then I put about 10% organic matter in the form of BuildASoil light blend. So you could use compost for that. You could use just straight peat moss or whatever you want, but we're using BuildASoil light for our top soil layer already. So just mix about 10% of that into the A horizon. So again, bottom layer, stone and sand only, no organic matter in that layer because we have standing water in that zone at all times. It's a water reservoir that acts like groundwater. On top of it, you got a little bit of organic matter in your sand, silt, clay layer. And then on top of that, the top layer here from about here down, 6 to 8 inches or so, is all pure BuildASoil. And when you go transition from your A to the topsoil, the O horizon, which by the way stands for organic matter, easy way to remember your O horizon, we blend in. There's a hard break between the E horizon and the A horizon, but then the A horizon is slowly transitioned into the O, so that as it's mimicking nature, In nature, the leaves are falling off trees and stuff. The plants are decomposing into the topsoil, and the highest amount of organic matter is right on the surface, breaking down. As you go down, it becomes more mineral heavy and less rich in organic matter. So this is biomimicry, basically. Like we set up a system where the plants always have groundwater to drink from, so they can pull water directly from the reservoir. But there's also nutrient cycling happening in my O horizon, which is balanced via soil testing through Logan Labs, and it's the typical. Everything else is your typical living soil setup where we're testing every round and re-amending with top dresses. But if you know how that works, you're only really going to affect the top 6 inches or so. If you're top dressing alfalfa meal for nitrogen, right?
Right.
It's only gonna affect the nutrient and mineral balance in your top layer. So we balanced our A horizon, That's one and done, and you never get to do that again. So that's important to do that as best as possible. But from here on out, it's all mulching for nutrition. I never feed any kind of liquid fertilizer. I don't even really like to use chelating agents like humic acids and things like that. I like to let the microbiology do it all. And I like to force the plants to use their symbiotic relationship with the soil food web to get all of their nutrition.
So, could you, well, I mean, you kind of already talked about this, but I'd love to hear you kind of expand upon it a little bit more about how you're doing two things: introducing more nutrients to that top layer, and then also, are you also adding more beneficial microbes or insects or whatever it is to help in this whole, symphony that you've got going on? I'd love to just hear that kind of strategy. Like, once you've got the bed built, so to speak, how do you kind of keep the thing going, rocking, between
Yeah.
cycles and everything?
Yeah, so the things that I've added in terms of biology are earthworms, for one. That's a one and done addition as well. Like, they just multiply and stay alive forever. I've got SF nematodes. You know about those? They're excellent for just keeping fungus, gnat larvae, and stuff like that under control. I don't have any issues with fungus gnats really at all. And we add predatory mites. And I used to do rogue beetles, but I didn't do any rogue beetles at all this time. So I got Steinernema, Feltier nematodes, Stradiolate soil mites, red wiggler earthworms, and then I inoculate with a microbial consortium from Rootwise. I use the Rootwise Soil Dynamics Microbe Complete, and use that in veg. This time I did it. I've always been using it actually up until about week 3. And then I switched to their BioPhos product, which is more phosphorus solubilizing microbes. Although just recently I learned that maybe it's a little better to switch to that earlier and get those ramping up, right around the beginning of flower. So that's what I'm going to do the next round. I re-inoculate with those from the top up until about the 3rd or 4th week of flower. Once a week I do that. And then after that, I don't top water at all for the entire remainder of the flower cycle. I only water from the bottom reservoir for the whole rest of the flower cycle. And that mainly is to discourage the growth of aspergillus so that I can pass my microbial testing. Because if my mulch layer is not soaked and, decomposing with a whole bunch of biology in it,
Yeah,
then microbials are a lot easier to pass.
that's so interesting.
And then, but as soon as I harvest, I'm going to go right back to drenching that mulch layer and getting that breakdown happening fast again.
Does it get super dry at that top layer? Like, I'm just curious.
Yeah, let's take a look. I'll show you guys. So we are pretty dry right now. If you check this out, you can dig down probably a good.
Yeah, that is. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty dry. But this is what I want.
So by having that kind of groundwater almost reservoir at the bottom, you're basically created a giant hempy bed. And so once the roots get down into that groundwater, that's what sustains them in a way that you're able to let your top layer dry out. How about foliar sprays? How do you kind of manage your foliar canopy?
Yeah, I'm doing foliars once every couple of days, maybe 2-3 days, all the way up to week 3. Then I cut the sprays out as soon as I start to get bud set. No foliars, no IPM, no nothing after that. So it's like 100% no sprays throughout most of flower. But before that, I use the Mountain Organics tincture product line, which I think is fantastic. He makes 4 different products there. So shout out to those guys for a great product. Those are glycerin tinctures. and it's a whole bunch of really beneficial herbs and essential oils. So I rotate through those 4 products, and every 2-3 days, the next one, and that is the only thing I ever really need to foliar, except for I will add in some aloe vera powder, Epsom salts, and silica are the other things that I like to foliar. And besides that, that's really it.
So JR has a note here that you have a greenhouse. Is this green? I'm sorry if I missed this detail earlier. Is this in a greenhouse or is this indoor? And if it is or not, that's cool too. I would love to learn about the grow house setup or greenhouse setup if you have one set up.
Yeah, so I'm proud of my team on this. This is our first run in this greenhouse.
Oh, sweet.
But it's not. It's our first run with living soil and me handling the grow. But these guys were a conditional license in New York State. They were a hemp farm, which got grandfathered into the rec cannabis program. So they've been operational for about 4 years already. And they just didn't really have like a pro grower. Like there were some guys who liked weed and had grown a little weed in the past in hobby setups. But mainly they were into weed. They were flipping packs. They were doing their stuff, and they wanted to get into the business when the opportunity arose here in New York. So it was sort of a perfect fit because these guys are a lot smarter than your average weed people that start to grow up and decide to borrow millions of dollars, get into huge amounts of debt, and give away all the equity in the process. These guys put up a very small amount of money at first, and we have zero debt, and we're on the shelves in dozens of stores here in New York, which is something that
that's huge.
A lot of people can't say. Yeah,
we talk about that a lot on this show because people usually have that fork in the road, and usually when they choose to not bootstrap it, they take on predatory lending. And then it ends up forcing them out of their own companies, their own IP, and everything they've worked so hard for. So in this environment, being in New York, I know your humidity has to slam you at certain times of the year. How do you manage your humidity and temperature inside?
Well, we got 3 Andon dehues in here, but quite honestly, those are mostly useless. Airflow is the king. When all else fails, you just keep that air movement going, keep your canopies defoliated as best you can. However, the only really tough months are the summer. And actually, I would say 6 or 8 months out of the rest of the year, the growing conditions are pretty nice here. And, this entire round, I've been able to keep my environmentals pretty well dialed in. So it's been nice because, I've only had a couple of difficult days here. And if I'm on site paying attention, it's just like, okay, it's getting hot. Let's turn on the gable fan, or let's close the curtains more. If it's getting too humid, it's like, maybe let's stop exchanging so much air with the outdoors and let the dehumidifiers catch up a little bit. It's a balancing act between all the factors, which right now we're handling pretty well. And someday soon, once our cash flow is coming in from this first big harvest we're about to have, we're going to upgrade to a nice controller that can do those, make those type of decisions without me having to be here every moment.
So, were there any? I guess since this is your first harvest, you're kind of going through it right now. But I guess were there other? Are there any kind of big challenges that you had with setting up the environment there? Just kind of any other kind of issues that you had to deal with?
Not really. It's heat and humidity in the summer. Those are the big ones. And even though this is my first harvest here, this is the second facility in New York that I've set up in this methodology. Taproot Fields is another business here. It's another micro license in New York, which hired me on as a consultant. So I taught them how to grow in living soil. We built horizontal living soil beds. and they have been crushing it. I don't know if you guys follow them at all, but they have won a first place in every competition they have entered. And in some cases, they have swept the entire competition with every entry getting a first place, which is pretty cool, you know, and some of them have been legit comps too, like not small events. So it's really just a testament to what's possible here. And they've grown year round too. So they've dealt with those environmental factors. They've got a wet wall over there that's active. We have one as well. So we're going to actually fire that up here soon. Haven't had to use it in the winter months. But as far as climate goes, it's really like the best advice I could give to any other growers who have the same challenges are to keep the airflow moving. Like, if it's too hot or too humid, that's okay. Like, plants grow well outside, you know, and a lot of times they don't get overrun with mold. Now, running like resistant varieties that are, you know, really vigorous and don't have problems with mold, that also helps a ton. Like, you know, sometimes if you got, even if you're indoors with a perfectly dialed environment, sometimes if you grow some big old donks, you know, you're going to get mold if it's a strain that likes to get mold.
Well, also you have a very large battery in your soil source, so it gives them a lot more shielding and protection in some of those extremes rather than being in a plastic pot. So that has its huge advantages as well. So what are you doing for light augmentation and light cycles?
Yeah, so the lights, obviously we have the sun, the best light of all, and that's a game changer, you know. But then we bought, so because we're bootstrapping here, another shout out to someone who's been a great support to us is Tony's Used Grow Equipment. We got a full set of Gavita DEHPS, which are the perfect light for a greenhouse in the wintertime. You know, people argue back and forth about HPS versus LED and whatnot, but if you're in a greenhouse like this in the wintertime, DEHPS is, in my opinion, unbeatable. That extra heat actually offsets our propane heat bill. And the red spectrum that's provided there also balances the blue light from the sun in the wintertime. You know, if you know about spectrum during different times of year, there's a lot less red in the wintertime and a lot more blue. So HPS is fantastic for the wintertime. And we have 48 lights. That's a little view up here. Let me see. These are the E series. So they're just chained together and linked to a controller. We've got 12 of them over each bed for a total of 48. And that's been doing the job quite well.
Awesome. We'd love to, unless JR, do you have any follow-up questions on lighting before I moved into this?
No, I think that's fantastic.
Okay. So back on the bugs topic. So have you had any sort of issues with pests so far? And how do you kind of mitigate those? I mean, you talked about the stratiolapsis and, you know, the various kind of beneficials that you have, but yeah, I'd be curious what your kind of IPM strategy is basically.
Yeah, so the foliar rotation I mentioned earlier is the main and only IPM that I have. That and I haven't really had any issues with bugs. This is common for me. I used to run a very large living soil facility in Colorado called Eden, and to my knowledge, it's like the biggest one out there still. But that one, you know, we went through it all. We dealt with a lot of different pest issues, and I really got to hone my trust, I guess you would say. When you see something like spider mites or aphids show up in a garden, and you're used to what happens in a synthetic grow, you know,
Nuketown.
Yeah, it's like, let's go, let's drop the nukes, let's freaking, you know, make some people even chop the whole crop, you know, and it's like, That's wild. That's a big risk to me. And so one of the major benefits of living soil is that all that extra energy the plants don't have to use converting simple nutrition up into higher forms, that energy goes straight to immune response. It's
Yeah.
actually the first thing that you see get. I mean, I haven't seen powdery mildew in years in my flower rooms. In these raised beds like this, it just doesn't happen. And it doesn't even matter what the conditions are.
It also boosts all your secondary metabolites, which is why you find living soil winning so many hash competitions and competitions in flowers general. We mentioned that here on
Yeah.
the Dew Grows Cup. Last 3 years of winners have all been living soil.
Yep, not surprising at all. Nitrate conversion alone, the simplest forms of nitrogen, which are basically what everyone's feeding if you're using fertilizers of most kinds. I've heard that the plant will use upwards of 50% of the photosynthetic energy it generates just to convert nitrate and reduce it to ammonium, which then gets built into amino acids and then gets used to build proteins and right up the chain, but in our systems, our plants are absorbing amino acids pre-built. They're absorbing proteins and fats. Our plants are carnivorous. They're eating bacteria through rhizophagy, and they're actually absorbing pre-built parts, not individual simple nutrients that they then have to spend a lot of energy assembling and reducing and such. So there's a lot of extra energy saved in that process that goes, like you said, to secondary metabolites, goes to immune response, and it goes to yields as well. So really, I've had no pest pressure, to speak of, except for a little bit of thrips. And what I learned at Eden, I was about to say, is like, you got to fight the urge to nuke stuff, fight the urge to get reactive and, try and push back, because almost anything you can do as a pesticide kills more than just the targeted insect or disease. It's going to kill a lot of things. It's going to weaken the overall health of your plant and its environment, its rhizosphere and its phyllosphere. When you're decimating that every day with even just soaps, like there's organic IPM treatments like potassium salts and fatty acids and soaps that are certified organic. But man, they really fuck up your plant health, especially if you have to use them many times in a row. So, I learned to trust this process. And I also learned to use sap analysis to get to the root of the cause. So that's something that I really dialed in at Eden as well, was working with AEA's cannabis consulting arm that they had, of advancing eco-agriculture, and like John Kemp. I had a consultant from their company that taught me how to analyze a SAP report, a SAP analysis. And, when you start to correlate the presence of certain pests with the presence of other things in your SAP or lack thereof, when you can actually diagnose why your simple nitrogens in your plant sap are too high, that's what aphids and spider mites eat. That's what powdery mildew wants, is like simple nitrogen. So if you have robust enough levels of complete photosynthesis happening, where all of those simple nitrogens are getting converted up into higher forms, you leave no food source for those things. And so what I've learned is how to grow plants that actually, if you pull a sap test on them, will show 0 parts per million of nitrates and ammonium in the plant sap, while still showing plenty of total nitrogen. So it's just that nitrogen is in higher forms. The plant then, and it's just like us, like cows with ruminant gut and the proper enzymes, they can digest grasses. But a human being can't eat grass and digest it, because we don't have a digestive system that's equipped to do that. That's the same thing with an aphid or a spider mite or anything like that. They can't digest complex proteins that contain nitrogen. They have to go after the simple forms because that's what their digestive system requires. Just remove them and then the pest just goes away.
So I saw recently you had a hoop house that didn't make it through the winter. Is that back up?
Oh
And
God,
was that
yeah.
a nursery for you?
No, thankfully that was just a storage unit actually. But it's still a bummer because even though all the team was doing was storing stuff in there, I was pretty excited to grow vegetables in there this spring, and we'll still be doing that just outside instead of in the hoop.
Awesome. So we're gonna shift gears from the kind of growing segment to kind of filling us in on the New York side of things, because JR and I both we're on the West Coast, so I think this show has a little bit of a West Coast bias to the show. So it's great to hear from someone from New York. So kind of diving in right with our first question, kind of catch us up on how legalization has impacted the industry, especially on the cultivation side of things. What's kind of the state of the business?
Yeah, so in New York, legalization has rolled out very slowly, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing, in my opinion. For one, it's kept the prices really high. So if you're somebody like me who's privileged enough to have a license, we're in a good position. We're getting $30 an eighth over here for good quality material, and so we do need to package it in eighths ourselves. But a $30 eighth is a 3K plus pound, and that's pretty awesome. Like there's not a lot of places in the country where you can still do that in the legal market. And of course, I keep telling my partners, like, don't count on this lasting forever because it won't. But right now, we've got a wonderful opportunity to really generate a lot of good cash flow because there's not an oversaturation of the market. And of course, New York has its problems everyone's aware of, which they call like inversion and product from California and Oklahoma, wherever coming in here. There's no track and trace system that's actually operational here yet. BioTrack is the one that got the state contract, which I'm really glad I don't have to deal with metric anymore because I hate metric. But BioTrack's just another. Who knows? I haven't used it yet, but yeah, no, I've used metric, not BioTrack. Metric.
No, I'm saying they're probably just another similar version of the same thing.
Oh yeah. There's some stuff like I don't have to buy the stupid tags with RFID chips in them. We make our own tags, so it's a little less expensive and wasteful on that front. I can reuse these tags instead of having to, create a whole bunch of waste and spend money buying more tags all the time. But eventually the track and trace system will be fully implemented, and and eventually the market will saturate, and the supply will catch up with demand, and this is a commodity just like anything else. So federal legalization or interstate commerce is coming someday, I assume. Still, once that happens, I don't think it's a controversial opinion, but I don't think there's going to be indoor grows in the future. Maybe that's 10 years from now, 5 years from now, but I don't really see a place for indoor cultivation once interstate commerce opens up because, you see tobacco being grown indoors. Do you see anything being grown indoors? Like not really. And cannabis is certainly not a plant that benefits from being grown indoors other than tight environmental control, which can still be achieved in a greenhouse like mine. I just think if you're building an indoor grow today in New York, like, hey, I got friends doing it, so no hate. I love you guys. If you want to be in this long term, though, like, I think the market, once the market matures out here and the demand does catch up, You'll see the prices drop, and then you'll see prices drop even more. So the only long-term play in my mind in this industry is quality and small batch craft production. Unless you want to try your hand at competing with tobacco and pharmaceutical companies, which I would advise against. um, I think that the quality play is the way to go here. And luckily, New York has given us at least a good shot at getting established first. Like states like Oklahoma and Oregon and Maine that opened up fully at the beginning, they saw the market crash a lot faster, which, that could be good in some ways too. But for right now, I'm just happy that we are where we're at, and we have the opportunity to continue bootstrapping. Actually, we could take down a nice bit of profit from this crop, and then we'll be able to reinvest that into expansion.
Well, I know that this slow rollout has maybe allowed folks to transition a little better, because often when the attorneys and the lobbyists move in on your state, it almost instantly becomes pay to play. And so that squishes a lot of our craft growers and a lot of our people who are not really able to compete and pay to play. So I think that has been kind of an advantage for you guys. Would you say that there are still those financial challenges that you guys face in trying to play in this legal market?
Yes, but not nearly as much. It's just like you said. It's New York came out the gate talking a real big game for small business and social equity. And they really said, we want to set it up so these guys have a chance. Now, in a lot of ways, they have not done that very well, but in a lot of ways, it's also working. It's working for us, which again, we're lucky. And there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines still waiting for licensing. But it's not expensive to get a license here. So the pay to play thing, like the barrier to entry isn't necessarily getting licensed in terms of money, at least, or even building a facility. Because, my greenhouse came from Alibaba. Now we got tariffs, so you might not be able to get these things as cheap from China anymore. But we paid very little for this kit. And then we put the kit up ourselves. We poured the slab ourselves, and one of my partners has a concrete business. So, we're lucky in a lot of ways. We got some advantages that other people don't, allowing us to bootstrap it.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And you guys are building a brand and a brand presence. And if you can establish yourself with high quality flower in that industry, I think the population of your state will keep you extremely busy for quite a while, because like you said, we don't have interstate commerce. So you guys have an influx of foreign weed coming in. But at the same time, you have a massive population. And my son is in Connecticut, and he comes down to New York to get weed all the time, because that's just where the good weed is at. And so I think you guys still have a big portion of the population still to serve.
Yes, people forget about the population thing, and that is one of the biggest advantages of New York, is the huge population, along with the epicenter status of New York City. Like that's where the best of everything is at. The best food, the best entertainment, and I don't think cannabis is going to be any exception. So when it comes to a craft niche, having New York City as a clientele to serve, there's always going to be people there that have enough money to spend on fancy stuff, the nice stuff. So I've been in the game for 15 years now, and I have not seen a better opportunity in the legal cannabis space in my opinion, than what is here in New York right now because of these reasons that we're talking about. Like, I am stoked to really just establish ourselves as a quality player. And I don't think we're going to run out of customers. You know, even when the price drops, I don't see us ever getting much less than $35, $40 an eighth for a high quality product like this.
And could you talk us through what's the kind of government approach or status? How do they treat you, the kind of the smaller businesses, basically? Like JR was kind of talking about earlier, you know, eventually, like we've seen in California and so many other states, it basically the market gravitates towards these giant, you know, conglomerations of companies and dispensaries and all kinds of stuff, vertical integration.
Yeah.
So yeah, how supportive is the government or the market to a smaller business?
It's another one of those arguable topics. Like, a lot of people have a lot of complaints. And then, you know, a lot of people it's working well for too. But I'd say overall, support for small business it's there structurally. And as far as like state interaction goes, like they pretty much leave us alone. OCM has made a couple of visits to our farm, and you know, they're not trying to grill us. They're like trying to support us. I think like when they come here, they have basically said, "Hey, we just want to make sure you got everything tagged and accounted for." Even though BioTrack isn't live yet, I think one of their big concerns is the track and trace. They want to. There's a big push here right now to fight the inversion, all the weed coming in from out of state. So I think they're trying to get a handle on that, and they want us to be tracking what we have so they can gauge, also maybe gauge how many more licenses to issue, how quickly to ramp up more production versus more retail, because that balance is what really can keep the price stable. And you know, it's not like when the price drops we aren't going to be able to do business. You know, there's still plenty of other markets like Colorado, where I came from, where the company I left is doing quite well. And you know, that's with a lot lower prices than we have here. But what really hurts us is the crazy swings, like especially in the startup years. You know, when you're a new business, especially a small business, and you know, laws are changing abruptly. And you know, like I remember in Colorado, the packaging laws would change, and it's like we'd have to freaking take everything we had off the shelf and buy all new packaging. It was, for some businesses, that was crushing. And they haven't done anything crazy like that to us here, so that's good. And then the slow rollout, you know, despite being slow and frustrating for a lot of people, has created stability that has not spiked the price up and down, you know, back and forth. So we've kind of been able to count on, you know, our projections, our financial projections and planning in that sense.
So do you see, you know, obviously when states come online, there's an influx of growers, you know, who are just kind of follow that path. Do you find there's a lot of people coming from other states setting up shop to try to get into the market? Or would you say that it's pretty tight within the New York State community?
I'm going to say that I'm not quite sure on that. Yeah, I couldn't say for sure one way or the other. I know plenty of people that have come from out of state, but ratio wise, I don't know how many are. Like, there's a lot of people like me for sure. Like, I moved to Colorado for 13 years, and but I'm a local to New York, so my family's here. This is coming home for me. I know a lot of other people that are the same way. They went out to California, out to Colorado, Oklahoma, Michigan. And when the opportunity arose here, they were like, "Ooh, finally!" You know, like whole
Yeah,
time
it's
I was out in
common.
Colorado, yeah, I was wondering, like, man, when's it going to happen? When is New York going to flip? Because that'll be really cool. And maybe I'll go back and work there, depending on, how
Life.
they
Yeah,
set
I
it
bet
up.
you're really stoked to get the opportunity. And we kind of highlighted that in the beginning. And then to be able to take your learned knowledge from, growing and living soil and being around that whole kind of uprising. Because I mean, in those forums, those are kind of the pioneering days for a lot of us who are trying to learn about, living soil. And one of my selfish
Mhm.
questions I should have asked earlier is one of the things I notice people have issues coming out of their cloner, whether it's an aero cloner or clone dome, and they go into their living soil. Sometimes that nutrient cycling takes a second to kind of kick in. Do you have any good advice for people when they're making that transition?
Um, yeah, I mean, soil moisture is obviously important. If you're transplanting a clone that's young, it shouldn't have high nutrient requirements anyway. Like you could transplant a fresh clone into ProMix totally inert and water that thing for a couple of weeks without seeing any deficiencies. So I think what's more important is not necessarily the cycling of nutrition, but the availability of water. Um, and then, of course, once that plant starts to grow and establish and the nutrient demands increase, then you have to have available nutrition. So, I mean, someone could, if they wanted to, use a nutrient if they thought they had to, like, I don't know. I'm not even going to say that because I don't think you have to do that. Like, I
What
was
if
going to
you
say
were
you
to
could
do
throw
like
some.
a foliar of some fish hydrolysate or something like that, just to kind of.
Yes. Now that's a great idea. As a matter of fact, I did that. This very round, I did that. I had some organics alive, carbon-based nutrients that we were using in the veg. Because when I came to this farm, they were in pots. They were in small containers, and they were feeding advanced nutrients and Athena. And I was like, hey guys, let's at least like get onto something organic, carbon based. So we got some organics alive in the house, using that in the veg. And I discovered that they have a really nice nitrogen foliar. They call it their trio foliar. And my plants were stressed big time when I transplanted them. If you can go back my Instagram and
I
actually look
saw
at
that.
how
Yeah.
they were. Yeah, it was it was a rough transition, mainly because the build out took longer than expected. And I had these plants in the 3¼ inch nursery pots that I use, some of them for upwards of like 4.5 to 5 months,
That's
just sitting
rough.
there. And I was ramping up the nursery at the same time. So it's not like I could kill them and take fresh ones. And like our moms weren't big enough yet. So, you know, that was tough. I just had to keep them alive. And basically what I did was keep them in the veg under almost no light at all. Like they were getting 50 ppfd, like under some cheap ass Barina LEDs, and barely growing at all. I had to top them and cut them back at least 3 or 4 times. And then when they finally got into the soil beds, a lot of them were root bound and having trouble. So I did the foliar, and that helped a lot. The foliar, trio foliar, really gave them a boost of nitrogen. They greened up pretty quick after that. And as soon as they really got their roots into the beds, then it was just, they took right off from there. It was a matter of a week or two, and they were blasting.
So,
Yeah, for me,
go ahead.
sorry, Q. For me, I'm close to the ocean, so I have a lot of access, to fish, and so I'm playing around with the fish hydrolysate and the fish amino acid um, this summer on my veggie garden and my cannabis gardens.
Yep. Yeah, and that's another good nitrogen source, uh and foliar would be my preferred method
Yeah.
for that. You can
Especially when
water
you're
it in
making
at
that
3 3.
transition, and like you said, if you are root bound or maybe you did overwater or something to that nature, sometimes those strategies can kind of help, boost you through that time of transition.
Yeah. Yep. That's a great way to go about it. And it worked well for us this last time.
So our last question. So when I was last in New York City, which was like at the end of 2023, I went around. I was trying to hit up some smoke shops, or I was trying to get some weed, I should say, and um, I just hit all these places that were selling fake weed. I think they were fake dispensaries because everything tasted like the shitty CBD that you buy at smoke shops or whatever. But so,
Man.
so one of our, I think we all aspire to a future, wherever we live, where people can just go to the farmer's market and buy weed, have some sort of experience like that, because it is just a plant and it's, just like tomatoes or whatever. So yeah, are
Yeah.
there farmers markets type situation in New York? Yeah, what's the kind of current status?
Yeah. So New York just actually reinstated what they call the Cannabis Growers Showcase. And that is a farmer's market model. You have to have one retailer, I think one processor, and at least 2 or 3 farms involved in the thing to plan one. But they're going to start allowing that again. They did allow that early on because they ramped up production faster than retail initially. And these farmers were sitting on a bunch of material complaining about not having anywhere to sell it. So the state said, all right, well, we're going to let you do these farmers markets. And it was really cool. So they shut those down after a little while, after they got the stores open. And but now they're bringing them back. So that's cool. On the rec market, that's what's going on. And then, of course, there is still a pretty robust scene, especially in the city, of legacy events and vendor events where you can go to certain smoke lounges, or sometimes they're in restaurants or cool venues or whatever, and you get some really good stuff from home growers and smaller brands that are not licensed.
Yeah.
Some of the best weed in the state is coming from those small batch grows as well.
Yeah, a while back, from a previous life, I worked in video games, and I knew this guy that is now the co-founder of the New York Growers Cup. So we actually interviewed
Yeah, Ben.
that. Yeah,
I
I
know
interviewed
Ben.
Ben before, like right before the first one. So back on the channel, folks can find that one. But yeah, I've known Ben for a long time now, 15 years or something.
He's
Just
a
for,
cool guy, and
yeah,
he's doing a great job curating some of the best stuff around. I just think the event that he put together is awesome, and I love, he's got a great location in Manhattan there, in Chelsea, I think. I try and stop in every time I'm in the city, and I'm straight up. I'll tell you, the best weed I'm smoking in the city is usually in that location.
awesome.
It's because I go in there, I see other growers I know, whether they're vending or not. Sometimes you're just chilling, smoking there. Last time I went in there, I saw Caesar from NY Seeds, and I pulled up next to him, and he was twisting up a big blunt of super lemon haze that rocked me, man. I hadn't smoked any good super lemon haze in years. Then I had to go get on the subway, almost having a panic attack
Yeah.
after that. It was awesome.
That is
That's
awesome.
So we'd love to hear you shout out, where can people follow you? We always get comments on our YouTube videos like, hey, does this guy have a Instagram? Because people sometimes forget to shout out their Instagram. So yeah, let us know, how can people follow you, learn more about you?
So I am rooted_NY. I think it's shadow banned. You got to type in the exact freaking, letter for letter, rooted_NY, and then look for our little logo. I'm going to be changing the branding around that pretty soon, because I started this company with a partner previously who I don't work with anymore. And we started it as an education and clone nursery, education business and clone nursery, which I'm not really doing anymore. Now it's all flowering.
Right.
And, my business here, this company's called Before Land Farms. And we do not have an internet presence yet. This is bootstrapped, like I told you, very bootstrapped. And we have no marketing, no internet presence, but we're looking to change that. And what I'm thinking is I may just convert my Instagram over to the farm's
Yeah,
social media account.
makes
But for
sense.
right now, look for rooted_NY. And I'm pretty much an open book. We're showing everything that we do here. I don't hide anything. You know, I'm trying to be the most transparent rec licensed farm in the state. Like, I don't think anybody else is really showing every step like we are. And I mean, you see it. Like,
Yeah,
if you're going to buy weed from us, you're going to know exactly what I did, exactly every step.
that's why I kind of asked you to come on the show. Is our our thing is open source. Almost all of our guests who come on, including Jeremy from BuildASoil, are open source folks who serve the community and serve the plant, not their egos and their pocketbooks. And so I saw your journey over the last, I think it's been a year that I've been watching you on Instagram kind of build this up and make this transition, got through the winter, and so I really wanted to invite you to come on and tell your story. And speaking of
Yeah.
that, at the end of the show, we like to reward folks for hanging out. And Kid Frost from Frost World Genetics donated a few packs for us to give away to listeners. This one is called Frostbite. And you can find Kid Frost on IG. I repost a lot of their stuff, and I'll be doing a little promo for this Frostbite pack. But I just love that the community that we serve, when we serve the plant, it lifts up everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a special place in my heart for growers, being someone who started on synthetics and was able to move into this methodology now. Really, because of the generosity of others and the openness of others, their willingness to share what they were doing openly. So I want to pay that forward. And that's the other reason, besides the transparency commitment we have. The other thing is I really want to show growers what's possible. And I'll tell you everything I'm doing. Like, really, you can copy my entire system. And all I'm hoping for is just that we get more good weed out on the market, more safe weed, and more real medicine. Honestly, like, you know, I want to see the small businesses and micros in New York succeed. So the more people that I can get on the low cost production methodologies like this that produce high quality, the better that's going to be for our community. So I really appreciate you guys having me on for that reason too, just to spread the word. And I'm kind of on a little crusade here to like convert New York to living soil
Yeah.
and high quality.
Well, we really appreciate your time. It's awesome to hear. You know, you were describing I think you call it the Elysian plane, you know, the plane build out of the soil and everything. You were talking about BuildASoil. I was like, this guy's doing like BuildASoil on hard mode, basically. And so it's really cool to hear you kind
But
of
it's easy too.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking about too. But yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
really awesome to hear, you know, hear your story and also to be able to see it, like, you know, you showed it on the screen, which is really cool. So yeah, we really appreciate your time today, Aaron. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. If everyone was watching, leave us a comment on our YouTube or on Spotify. Let us know what you thought. We'd love to hear from you guys. JR, thanks for putting together today's episodes. Thanks to our sponsors for the support for the show. Thanks to the CannaBuzz community. We'd love to see you over there in the community. Any other shout outs, JR, before we go?
No, I just want to say thanks for coming on. And I want to stay tuned and keep to see how the story unfolds, because I think you're doing amazing things in a very opportunistic environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys again. I'm going to keep sharing. So I'm going to keep showing it. And hopefully we make a big impact here in New York and around the country.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch, and we'll have to check in with you again, maybe later in the year or something like that, in the fall or something. But thank you so much for your time. Thanks everyone for watching. And JR, as always, growers
Growers
love.
love.
Peace, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.